most people don't get anywhere in life because they just don't feel like getting anywhere in life. And by most people, I'm just talking about like if you're going to look at the number of people who have kind of given up on their dreams, and I mean, I don't know if you can quantify that, but it's just because they didn't feel like pushing any harder. And that's okay sometimes. It's probably not okay when the things that you are wishing to accomplish could benefit the world positively, and you decide, I just don't feel like it. It's just too hard. Launch into it, but certainly no, like we had that conversation around grinding 2 weeks ago, and
I think
now
it was about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, now it actually feels like a grind, but not the super enthusiastic one, but instead just like slow millstone breaking crap kind of. Yeah, just not feeling it. Not feeling a lot of things, and I think that's something.
To catch everybody up, when Adam and I first hopped on today, we were both, I think, becoming aware of the fact that we were very low energy, and we started discussing or talking around why. And so we're just like, man, let's just have this conversation where everybody else can hear it, because I think we all deal with days where, we might like what we do and we might like the people that we get to do it with. But even with all of that, there's moments where it's just things are tiring, and it's hard to find that gear to shift into to still push through things. So that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, it's kind of like what you had said before we started. There's times throughout the day, especially on a day like this, where you're not feeling especially energized, that you just kind of look at your to-do list or whatever it is that you're responsible for, and you just have to check off the work. I mean, it would be just as easy to shut the laptop, walk out the door, but you know that when you open that laptop back up, nothing's going to have changed. That work is still going to be there to get done. And of course, I think also a lot of the time when that happens, I realize that if I slack at all on that it's going to have a compounding effect. And all of a sudden, like my decisions to be lazy in the moment are certainly going to pay me back in a negative way in the future. So I guess I'm just trying to erase time debt by motoring through something, even if it takes a little bit longer.
Yeah, no, I think that there is, it's I think that there's a certain level of self-awareness, and I agree with you. I think that when we're not in the mood or we're not feeling something, and that's the dangerous thing about, allowing yourself to indulge your feelings lots of times, is that is the type of dance that you can end up doing. But I think there is a time where, if you're not feeling, obviously if you're sick, which, Adam, I know you were sick last week and you're coming off of the tail end of that. Like sometimes someone does need to take a break, and get the rest that they need so that they can get better. And I would definitely say that was the case, for you last week, which, having talked to you now, know that you actually were still doing work as well. But I think there is a time where, the body does need to get rest. But I think, even on those days, David Goggins talks a lot about how what does he say? It's like you always have 40% more to give than you think you do.
Yeah.
Is that the number he throws out there?
Oh, no. I think you have 60%. Usually when you
60%.
feel like quitting, you've reached 40% of the capacity.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure that's not founded in any study other than his own personal thinking on the matter, but I get it. I don't know if I agree with that number, but yeah, you can always.
Yeah, the number's the number, right? It's whatever he's thrown out there, but I do think that what's true is that we do have more in the tank than we think we do. And I think that's where it goes back to, like, if you choose your hard, you can consciously in that moment choose to, okay, like I'm not going to be able to work till 6 or 7 o'clock like I was going to, like, but I know I can push through till here, and I'm going to, I don't want to, like, I want to call it right now, but I'm going to go, push a little bit further. So that way, these things are cleared off, tomorrow when I come back. Yeah, I would say that I try to think like that as often as I can. I try to push through. I definitely try to not indulge like the feelings I have because for me, whenever I am starting to resist something, yeah, I could be tired. I mean, and there could be a lot of things going on, to where, it could be factoring into like the desire to take a break or, not go as hard as I was planning on going. But, I think, again, kind of go back to saying before, I think I'd rather try and get as much done on the front end of that and not get where things kind of stack up and compound and start listening to my feelings too much. I mean, again, we all have them. They're not bad. They're not good. They're what are. I think for me, anytime I start resisting something, the first question that I always ask is there growth happening right now where I'm forcing myself to do something that's slightly uncomfortable? Yeah. And like, that's also part of the feeling that I'm dealing with. And if that's the case, then I know I'm right where I'm supposed to be, and I do need to keep pushing for a bit.
Yeah, I think one of the easiest things to do when we're in a position like this where you just don't feel like working anymore is to focus on easy work, like stuff that you can knock out without having to put too much thought into it.
Yeah.
Because kind of to what Goggins is saying is like when your mind is telling you that you can quit or that you should quit, your body has this much more in it. I mean, it's not the same thing, but people don't realize that your brain has an intense need for calories in order to think or to process. And so if you're already feeling fatigued, if you're already feeling drained, and you're like, I'm going to go take on this really big task that I have in work or wherever, and it's going to require quite a bit of my mental resources, that's something that you should probably avoid. And then instead it's just like go through that to-do list of just the BS items, the busy work that you're like, I could do this in my sleep, and move through that. Because I mean, that way, like, that's how I do it a lot of the time. If I'm just like, I don't feel like going on anymore, I'll at least go through all of the work that I think about being on the easy side, and I try and focus on that as opposed to some of the harder work. I mean, I've had a couple things here since I've been sick that I have not touched because my brain is still not totally showing up for me. This brain fog is pretty intense. And yeah, once I actually have the energy and feel much better, I'll probably do that. Another thing too, and this is sometimes out of our control, but being able to focus on those types of things early in the morning when you have energy reserves is pretty important. So, I wish that more calls happened later in the day as opposed to earlier in the day, because that's when I could actually get that focus time and really hammer out some good work. So, of course, like now, today's was, we're meeting with people in England, so we have to meet early because that's their dinner time. So I don't even have an option. So that made it a little bit more difficult just for today. But again, I was able to fill the rest of the day with this, and here we are on the podcast, and it's getting towards the end of the day. So let's have an easy conversation, not try and bite off a bite of a topic that would be far too big to manage from at least my mental state or yours. I know you said
no. When we first got, I was sharing with you that I think I've got like a residual kind of thing going on where it's been like, I think you can kind of get overrun by a series of events. So May's been a very intense month from a business standpoint of just a lot of the projects that we have going on. And then, I've got a daughter that's graduating in May, and we've been prepping our place for that because we're going to have a bunch of people coming to celebrate for that. And then we had a daughter that had surgery last week, and then had 2 different events. One was out of state, and it's like, I think the thing that I kind of found myself kind of like as an after action type review mode, looking at all of that and going, okay, there was one thing in there that was a surprise. One of the events wasn't something that I had planned, but it was a good opportunity. So, I jumped on that one. But even with that, I probably I would have been well served to sit down and look at my schedule and look at the specific things that I knew really needed to get done, and kind of just make sure, like for me, like I was clear on prioritization. I mean, I did a little bit, but I know I could have done it better, where I could have taken, okay, here's what I know is happening. Like, here are the things, and looking at it from the standpoint of, all right, worst case scenario, here's how long this is going to take. Here's how long this is going to take. I know there's going to be distractions that are going to pull me off of being able to do things here, and essentially like reconfigure my schedule, and making sure that, like, all right, I know I'm not going to be able to do stuff the way I normally do, but I'm going to make adjustments. And so that's something that like I'm going to continue to be looking at myself. And then I also too, I think there's times when, I've had this conversation with one of my brothers. He has a special needs child like I do as well. And there are, and I actually don't think it's any different whether you have a special needs child or not. I think maybe just depending on the needs of any children you have, or your family's makeup in general. Like, you could be looking at like any event you're going into, or where you're having like a big weekend. Maybe there's travel, maybe there's different things that are happening. Sometimes like you need to be able to take a look at, and when you start feeling like things are getting overly intense, or things are not happening the way that you wanted them to, it can be hard to take a step back and recalibrate. I mean, sometimes you just need to not do something. So I mean, example of you getting sick. I mean, there is something that's pretty cool about being able to power through that, and still getting stuff done. But is there a cost to it? Like, are you actually going to be sick longer because you didn't just sit down?
I bailed on almost every call for 2 days. So
yeah, which was good. I mean, you needed to. I mean, you weren't gonna be able to be fully present on the call.
Yeah.
So that was a good example of going, okay, like, all right, I know I'm not going to be able to show up the way that I need to here. It's better for me to back off and rest. So that was a really good example of where I think that you did do that and did exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's something that I'm trying to do more of when I look at certain situations where it's like, okay, like all of these things, am I biting off more than I can actually chew here, and trying to find the right, that just being on the edge of that, where it's like, all right, I can still get these things done. I can still accomplish the different things that I've set out in front, of myself to do, or, with whatever I'm focusing on. But, yeah, it's a constant dance.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is just maybe it's not another thing, but as I reflect on how I felt for the past few days, how I feel right now. I mean, yesterday there was just like a really raw energy that I didn't even want to plug back in, because of how I was sick, had a weekend where I started to get better, and then Monday came around. It's like I don't even want to work. Like, this sucks. So what I was going to say, though, is it's nice to know that these feelings are just that. I mean, sure, low energy is an obvious thing, but like if you had the right number of calories coming in, if you have been sleeping well, if you've been doing all the things that you need to do to run, that's just a feeling. And probably in some way it could be emotional. Maybe you're responding to something else in your life. Maybe there is situational angst that is causing you to feel this way. The nice thing is it won't be this way forever, because same way that a couple weeks ago, I was feeling like for 2 or 3 solid weeks, just really, really good, knocking off my to-do list, even though I don't really have one. But I'm just like, I'm aware of where I'm at in work, and I'm excelling. So to be here where I feel like I'm beneath the waves a little bit, I know I'm not going to be here that much longer. So I at least am able to recognize that and say, this is just a temporary setback in my outlook, in my temporary setback in my energy levels. So I know that it'll get better. I don't have to worry about it being like this all the time, and I can give myself some grace for not wanting to work nearly as hard as I usually do. And again, I think this is where it comes back to, like, this is actually the grind now. I don't have to work 80 hours a week. I just have to grind through 2 to 3 days of not feeling like I want to work out of my 40 to 45 hour work week. And it's changed. The grind has changed, and I'm okay with that. And I think I'd even mentioned it. Like, I'm glad that I had learned how to work really hard when I didn't want to, in order to get to where I am right now, so that I can fall back on that muscle memory.
Hello.
We have a guest.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Irene. What's your name?
Hi, Irene. It's Adam.
Hi. Hi, my name is
Hey.
Irene. What's your name?
Hi, Irene. My name is Adam.
You've met Adam before.
Do you remember me?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, we've driven around in the car a couple times. I've been over
yeah.
to your house. Yep. How are you feeling?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm
feeling
good.
good too. How are you?
Good. I'm glad that you're doing better after your surgeries.
Wait, is this on YouTube?
It'll be on YouTube at some point.
Oh.
What?
Everybody will hear me.
Yeah, they will.
Wow.
Maybe we'll have you on. Maybe we'll have you on a day and we'll actually interview you.
That's awesome. Is she worried that she's going to be famous now? Yeah, so I can't remember where we were before your daughter came in, but I think it was about the muscle memory and being able to go back to that. There's so many days where throughout the year where you feel like this. I mean, it's just natural. And so to understand that it's natural, to build those muscles, those memories and the habits to be able to push through, it's nice. It doesn't make it all that much easier, but at least okay, yeah, I got this. It's not going to be pleasant, but
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah, well, and that's where I think it's also helpful to have a really strong why. I mean, I think we all know what I think we have, the why that we have from a business standpoint, but then we also, know what each of us are doing, what we're doing for individually. So lots of times I try to remind myself about that when I get into those modes. I just kind of remind myself what I'm doing it for, and, getting in front of, I like what you said earlier about staying in front of, like, not creating debt where, you kind of get behind the power curve as far as, like, the work that you have and staying, having that momentum. And on the days where I'm feeling where I'm just like smoked, it's like, I try and take I take a look at everything I have going on. I'm like, all right, like, here's what I absolutely have to get done today. And then I work to get that done. And then I try, like we were talking about earlier about having more in the tank. Like, I try, okay, what's one more thing I can do? What's one more thing I can do? And, like, what's one more thing I can do? And I found that it's almost like back in the day when I was trying to lose weight, when I was high school, when I got really big after I wasn't playing football anymore. Like, I would go for runs, and, like, I would just in my mind be like, okay, if I make it up to this spot further down the road, like, I'll be good. And I just kept doing that to myself. Like, I'd get that spot, I'd be like, all right, if I can just get down to that stop sign down there, like, that'll be good.
Yeah,
and, like, I kept doing that.
That's what a lot of ultra marathon runners do. I can't remember whose podcast I was listening to, but that's exactly how this guy at least, and I'm sure a lot of them do, they make it. They're like, okay, just need to make it 20 yards to that. And then you just pick off these things, because it's a lot easier to run 20 yards than it is to run 100 miles.
Yeah.
And so you're just stringing 20 yards
imagine.
together, back to back to back to back. And,
Yeah.
I think that keeps your mind occupied too. Then you don't have to think about the totality of what you're trying to do. And, like, if all you're trying to do is make it from 9 to 5 or 8 to 5, yeah, what can I do for the next 15 minutes? And then I think, honestly, work from home, a lot of people probably do this more than they should, but, small little reward. I'm going to go get on Instagram for 5 minutes and decompress while I try and work through this. As long as it's just 5 minutes, or, go work out, do some push-ups, whatever it is. But I think those reward mechanisms can help on days like today where you're struggling. And I really think what you said about the why is the most important thing. I don't think about it the same way, but I had mentioned that I was interested in talking about death today, which I know is a super morbid topic on its face, but we just had a young girl pass away in our church over the
no.
weekend. And, I mean, she had been sick for a long time. She had cancer. She was actually born sick. She was born with a heart defect that she had surgery on pretty much within 48 hours, so sick her whole life. Had cancer for the past 2 years, and she just passed away. They're going to be doing her funeral tomorrow at our church, and I was just thinking about that. I've been thinking about that a lot. I don't think that contributes to my low energy levels. I mean, maybe there is something about that. Like, it's pretty heavy to think about, so I know that I'm affected. I didn't know her all that well, so it's not like I can say, oh, I'm devastated, but it's there in the back of my mind. But nonetheless, I'm thinking about, I get to do this. Like, I get to show up and I get to work. I get to put food on our plates. I get to help keep a roof over our heads. I get to build a company that is enriching the lives of the people who work for us or inside of the company, as well as the customers who we serve. We're building something of value, something that we really believe in. And, despite what people say about all of our ads out there, we're just, the only reason we're able to run ads like that, everybody, is because everybody wants to buy the product. So, I mean, I have no misgivings about how much money we spend on ads, knowing how many people are buying Vanish holsters or Modern Needs products. And the reason they're buying them is because they believe that they're going to be effective at helping keep them safe or keep their families safe. And they are. And I think that too is part of the why. So when you think about, like, you only have a short amount of time here, and when on those days you feel like you're not giving it your all, at least giving some towards the ultimate goal it's helpful. And to have that goal, to have that purpose or your mission, it makes it a little bit easier, because you at least know you're not doing something that ultimately leads to nothing.
Yeah, so, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think different things are going to work for different people, whether it's, kind of playing the mind games, or if it's like, reminding yourself kind of like the bedrock of what you're standing on and why you're doing what you're doing. I mean, there's days where the mind trick stuff works better for me than the why. Sometimes the why is enough. I mean, there's with having, our daughter Irene, like there's certain things that I have to have, with her, having special needs. There's certain things that I really need to make sure are set up for her in a certain way before her mother and I, pass on. And there's lots of days where like that does keep me going longer. Like when I think about it, I'm like, all right, like I get X amount of time here, and like every moment that I'm working here is, hopefully, and not just for her. I've got my two other kids as well. But like, she will always be, or most likely, there'll be some level of dependency that she has on people around her. And so it's, I think that one is a little bit more, there's a little bit more, juice around that one.
Yeah. I think when you're able to go through the list of the reasons why you do these things, if it starts with people that aren't you, it's probably easier to motivate yourself or to be inspired to continue to go to work. But if it's all about you, what you're going to get, how you're going to prosper, how you're going to benefit, and then, I mean, maybe you're able to muscle it, but you won't be any happier when you have achieved those kinds of things, I don't believe.
Yeah.
Because those are hollow pursuits, and building relationships, maintaining relationships, and, realizing that your job is kind of the vehicle that allows you to pay for the maintenance of those relationships, because, or in some capacity, right? Like, you don't actually have to spend a lot of money to maintain a relationship, but if you're married and you have kids, you certainly want to make sure that everybody's in the same house. Or if you're not, and, like your situation is still going to be financed by what you're able to generate at work, I think that that's a pretty important thing to consider. So, I think keeping your eye on those relationships is super helpful. And again, that comes back to, for us and for probably everybody, the why. Like, why would you even rough it and make a hard day even harder, so to speak? Like, anybody could just call it early and head to the bar.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I don't know if the bar's open at 11 a.m., but you can go to an airport.
Depends on the time. Or depends on the town you're in, I guess. There was the last town I lived in, there was a bar that was open at 11. I was pretty shocked at times. And this was, shouldn't say shocked. It was a very, it was a very nice neighborhood, and I'd go in there at 11 and people would already be obliterated on a weekday. I was like, wow.
Oh my gosh.
That's rough. I don't know what you got going on, but either too much of something or not enough of something.
Right.
Or both. But yeah, no, it's tough, man. People can be pushed to some pretty rough spots. This life can chew you up and spit you out. Yeah, I think you mentioned something earlier too. With regards to, when if you get to a point in a day where you're kind of having a hard time focusing on the bigger things. So it's find the smaller things on the list and kind of just start whacking away at it. There are days when I am trying to shift gears to work on some of the bigger, more important topics, or not topics, more important, projects or whatever you want to call them, tasks that might require more thinking time. And I'll intentionally on those days start out with those smaller things just to kind of, get some quick wins. Feel like I'm knocking things out, and I find myself actually feeling, a little bit more energetic, or there's something about just getting that momentum going. That helps me a lot on certain days. It doesn't always work, but the good portion of the time that it does. And
I'm the opposite. When I've got something like that, I try and do the harder things early if I can.
Yeah.
I got this from when I used to, or I still take supplements, but I would carry all my supplements around with me, and I'd have them in a Ziploc bag or something, and then I had the big glucosamine supplement, which is a horse tablet, and then I'd have all the other smaller ones. Throughout the day, I noticed that that glucosamine tablet, I never took that one. It was very rare because it was so big that it always ended up coming down last, or not even happening. So I called it my big pill philosophy, where it was just get the big things done quicker so that the other things come easier. Whereas if if you're the kind of person who's I can do the easy things and then that moves me to the big things because I'm getting those quick wins, that could work. But that was never me. I was always tomorrow. I'll get that big thing done tomorrow. But again, that's the philosophy where if now I'm not feeling well, or if I'm feeling low energy, I know I can't commit to that. At least I can go ahead and knock out those smaller ones.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes absolute sense.
And I think that I'd love to see some research on that, what it's like to push through low energy days. And again, I think that comes to that book Grit that I was referencing in our Grind podcast about how, a lot of the times people who demonstrate grit are able to do that because they just keep pushing. They just don't stop. And I think it's just so easy to stop in many situations because you're I don't feel like it. And I mean, most people don't get anywhere in life because they just don't feel like getting anywhere in life. And by most people, I'm just talking about if you're going to look at the number of people who have kind of given up on their dreams. And I mean, I don't know if you can quantify that, but it's just because they didn't feel like pushing any harder. And that's okay sometimes. It's probably not okay when the things that you are wishing to accomplish could benefit the world positively, and you decide, I just don't feel like it. It's just too hard. Or yeah.
No. Gosh, some other stuff that I do when I'm really having one of those days is I make sure to move around more. I will purposely make sure that I'm getting up at every 45 minutes to 60 minutes and moving around, going outside, getting in the sun, getting fresh air, trying to walk and be around trees, a little bit of nature. Fortunately, I live out in the country, so I've got, a good amount of nature around me. So I've found that to be helpful. Doesn't have to go. I don't have to go for a 30-minute walk. Just a quick 5-10 minute reset. Lots of times is all I need, and I'll kind of pair that with drinking, making sure I'm staying hydrated. Like, because lots of times when we are starting to feel low energy, lots of times it's just because we're dehydrated. We don't have enough sodium, magnesium, potassium. So I'll pair it with that. And sometimes I keep 10, 15, 20 pound dumbbells around in my office or in the house. And I'll sometimes just pick those up and just do like 20, 30 bicep curls, and I think just some quick movements, just something that kind of gets the muscles pumping, gets the blood moving a little bit. I find helps a lot.
Yeah, I mean, what else better to pump you up than to get a pump? I mean, Arnold would certainly agree.
Yes, he would approve.
Yeah, I mean, of course, physiologically, you're going to be helped out by the fact that you've got increased blood flow. Nitric oxide is increased as you've worked out, but I mean, just being able to flex and be like, yeah, look at this.
I got some
hot.
guns. That's right.
I think the movement component is really helpful. It's tough here, and probably half the reason that I feel the way that I do right now is it's in the mid 60s and it's rainy and overcast, so I don't have the option of going outside and pulling in some vitamin D. But there's breathing exercises that sometimes I try to do. Like there's square breathing, which is, I think, if I'm thinking, or is it box breathing? I can't remember the right definition.
Box breathing.
Yeah, box breathing. So something like that. Just making sure that you're breathing in for an extended period of time, holding it, exhaling, holding it, inhaling. That kind of breathing can really help enhance blood flow, helps out with neurotransmission as well. So, there's a lot of little things that you can do, and it's hard to remember them, but just knowing that you have access to it is helpful. I like Kratom. I think I've never talked about this here. I know I've talked to you.
I know
about
you mentioned it.
Yeah, so Kratom is a plant from, I can't remember the exact country. Well, it's from a couple different countries in Asia. It's related to coffee. So the interesting thing about Kratom is that there's, as far as I know, there's 3 different types. So you've got a red, a white, and a green. They all obviously come from different colored plants. Red and white are known for both calming and analgesic effects or pain-killing effects, whereas the green kind of has a stimulant property. So I've kind of compared it to, Kratom feels like what coffee should. Like when I'm drinking coffee, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to get this boost of energy. But no, I'm really just drinking something that I drink every day. So I'm more or less accustomed to what the caffeine's going to do to me. But the alkaloids inside of Kratom have, at least in green Kratom, have some stimulating effects. And it's nothing crazy. It's just like a nice, clean amount of energy with, I mean, there's a crash-ish, kind of like how you would crash after coffee. But I find that it's helpful when I'm really, really dragging and I need to be able to provide some additional energy or some kind of focus. So I think I had some earlier today knowing that I was going to be struggling with my energy levels, and it tapered off pretty much right before we got on this call. So that's probably why I was even more enhanced. I was just like, oh, man, now I just came down from this.
Hitting the wall.
Yeah. So Kratom can be addictive, much like caffeine can be addictive, but it has some slightly stronger addictive qualities. So I will make that caveat. If you're somebody who struggles with addiction, I don't know if Kratom is the right choice for you. You could obviously try it out and see how it affects you. But I would say that if you find yourself experiencing positive results with Kratom and then all of a sudden you're like, I do it every day, that's a red flag. I don't do it every day. I do it probably 2 to 3 times a week at the most. So I do want to make that caveat because one of the ways that Kratom has helped a lot of people is it helps them get off of opiates because it binds to your opioid receptors, and that's where the red and the white are really helpful.
Interesting.
So that's where you can obviously get into some trouble because if you're playing,
how do you spell that?
Kratom.
Okay.
You can find it in head shops. You can find it online. I don't think that it's on Amazon. It's not regulated, but it also is not something that's readily available in a grocery store. It's right there next to Kava, and what are some of the other things that you would see there? Probably CBD, it's next to CBD, all those types of things. But any head shop in most of the United States would have it. tastes like
There you go.
ass. It tastes like
I'm
utter
so
ass.
very motivated to take it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, maybe that's why I'm not addicted to it, because I'm just choking it down. I mix it with like about 2 to 3 ounces of some kind of citrus water, so like lemon water,
Okay.
orange juice mixed with water, or my elements. That's pretty helpful. But that's been something that has really helped, and so I was hoping that the half-life would have maintained itself a little bit longer than it did, because it was obviously pretty pronounced when we came on. You're like, you're low energy. I was like, no, you're low energy. And you were. And actually, okay, so this is actually something that's really helpful. Talking. I mean,
Yeah.
just getting on this podcast and starting to talk, like, so much more helpful.
You know, it's funny. That's something that it's worth mentioning. There are days where I will purposely call somebody early in the day that I know is somebody that, like, when I get into conversations with them, I always end up coming out more energized. I've got a few people like that I will intentionally call them to, like, you know, kind of, I don't know if it's like just shaking the dust off or something from like the sleep, where it's like, all right, I just need to really get my brain going. That's another one worth noting. So I'm glad you thought about that, because that is something else that I for sure have done on days like that, where I'm just kind of like, all right, man, why can I not shift gears? It's like, what's going on? I've also found too, sometimes where it's like, if I don't want to do it, if I was like, all right, let me just sit down and start doing it and not worry about how good the result is. And then within 10, 15 minutes, I'm like, oh, okay, I just needed to sit down and do it. For some reason, for whatever reason, I was just resisting doing work. But no, I think those are all really good things to kind of have on that list of things to kind of have the protocol for how to kind of work through the funk, whether it's you're not feeling good or if you're just you know, there are some days where like you feel good and you're just resisting, like there's just a resistance to like focusing on certain things.
Yeah, I think it comes with the territory of being human. So while you were talking about that, I was not listening. I'm hoping for the benefit of the audience they were, but I was just doing some quick research on the release of oxytocin during conversation. So oxytocin is it's known as a feel good hormone, similar to dopamine or serotonin. Because I was like, talking, that's great. And so it turns out there's this article here from the Harvard Business Review that says that positive conversations can help to release oxytocin. So I think that's a pretty good reason to have a conversation with somebody if you're feeling
connection.
fatigued.
Just get connected.
Right. I don't think that I don't think it's gonna hurt.
Dude, I do a new thing in my house with all of my kids, and my wife too. Though I hug my wife all the time, any chance I get. Pretty much just will always try and grab my wife if I can. With my daughters though, I will notice that if they're just in a bad mood, I can't remember where I heard this. I heard it was either a podcast or I read it. But I think if you are hugged or hugging somebody, after about 20 seconds of being in an embrace, your body does release oxytocin. Mm-hmm. So like anytime someone in my house I can walk in and I can tell that they're just in this bad mood. I'm like, okay, come here. I'm like, you know what we're doing.
Bring it in. Bring it in.
I'm like, all right, like this is 20 seconds at least. And it's funny, man. It's like pretty much every time, like everyone feels better afterwards. So there is something to be said for just connection and trying to connect as much as we can, whether it's through conversation or it is through, consented affection. So yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's
man.
One of those. Well, oxytocin is also released between a mother and an infant during breastfeeding. So it's one of the very first chemicals that you have released into your body, released into your body, but that you release. I mean, literally out the gate, there you are and your mom. They're hopefully attaching you to her, and you've got this oxytocin release. So like that's something that you're almost preconditioned to need in order to go throughout your day. So
Yeah.
if you're not getting it, it's probably a contributing factor. Like not getting it meaning you don't have positive interactions with other people. You're not able to do this, that, or the other with another person. So like its absence is probably a reason for low grade energy. And I'm trying to think like, have I even hugged my wife today? Probably not. So
Yeah.
maybe that's a good reason. I'll be right back.
Yeah. No, go get it, man. Go get that hug. I got one right before we hopped on the podcast. She made it back from wherever she was out running errands and definitely got a hug.
Yeah, they're at music class right now, so I will not be
Nice,
able
there you
to
go.
squeeze one in.
But no, I think that's a good list of. I think we've kind of chatted through a good list of things. Good reminders on a number of those too. Sometimes it's like sometimes you should get in a funk and it's like you forget the things that you've done in the past to work yourself out of that as well. So it's kind of, I don't know. I found it helpful just to chat through it. As always, I think
Yep.
we're at that point. I'm gonna have to jump here in a few.
Yeah, we are. So, y'all, thanks for listening. I know that hopefully it got more energized as we went through. If you liked what you heard, want to hear more, don't forget to like us on any of the social channels, follow us on the social channels, and of course on the app that you're using to listen to your podcast. Please go ahead and subscribe and review. That is always helpful for getting the algorithm to share Patriot on Purpose with everybody else. And we think that we're doing something unique here. Obviously, the marketplace is saying, you guys are doing something unique here. That's where the success of our companies has really been borne out. And we're hoping that this podcast can just kind of ride that train and, of course, reestablish Patriot as a good word here in the United States. So, thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone.